I do want to specify before I begin to the camera that everything I say completely represents my opinion in real life. Okay? 2 points in my speech. First is going to be about why the life of the children who are going to be sold are going to be great, while they're going to think wonderfully of themselves and have great families. Secondly, will be about the actual comparative to adoption, why Sella simply asserts that we cannot change the pool of number of parents who are actually willing to adopt, why we are going to actually have more adoptions on our side, which is crucial, by the way, since note the first rebuttal that OG gets from Amichay is, but most of your problems can be solved by simply these families giving away their children to adoption, right? So we are going to show you why adoption in the status quo is not a sufficient solution. But before that, a lot of external support. So first, about the entire different the discrimination in prices that represents whatever bad stuff about minorities, etc. Zero data about the existing discriminations. I have no idea what has more effect and impact on people's self-esteem than just being aware of the wage gap between ethnical or gender groups. Secondly, I have really no idea why it's more important than the actual right of a certain child to a better family. And lastly, please note, I have no idea why even these statistics are available to people, right? Most people don't talk about how much I sold my baby for, right? We don't think it's going to be something that everyone knows about and actually is going to get to huge statistics. About the point of people are going to actually be coerced to do it against their will. Few things on that. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. So we think few things are crucial to understand here. We agree with the framing that says there are good cases and there are bad cases, and what matters is what is more likely. Few things important to remember here. A, note the comparative to adoption seems to also be missing from OO's analysis, right? Because I have no idea why this being not really rational after giving birth, why having all this economical pressure when babies are already super expensive, etc., doesn't just pressure me to give away my child to adoption in the status quo, right? Secondly, we say, since this is a decision that is made at least as a couple, if not as a whole bigger family, etc., since usually it's something you wait with, since usually if you wouldn't want the baby in the first place, you wouldn't give birth to it or had an abortion, so usually you do wait a few months after the pregnancy to actually realize that you can't afford to pay for it, and since you actually have to give explanations to your family and friends because everyone knows you had a baby and suddenly where did it go, and it's something that has a lot of stigma, we really don't understand why coercion is super likely in this debate. We think that a much more likely scenario is actually it being said as an enabler to families who already want to give it away, but now they just need the extra excuse. Let's get to the points. So, first, why do we think the life of the baby will be wonderful? So we already got from Schulman the case that says kids wants to say, look, I'm more expensive than your house. Yeah, we think it's a very nuanced version of the reality, and we definitely agree. We think, however, that something more crucial in this to remember is the parental part in this, and the way that parents are actually likely to represent it to their child. And we think, obviously, they're going to wait for a grown enough age to actually tell this, like we see already happening in most adopting families. But B, we think that the likely way that they're going to describe it is few things that are that A, represent the way that they have seen it when they actually took the child, and therefore it is likely that they will say it this way. Also, obviously, they care about the child's well-being. First, the element of choice. We think more than a child's ability to actually perceive how much money I'm worth and what it says about my worth. The idea that I wasn't just random. My parents chose me over many other kids. I don't think he said that, but the idea that I know my parents chose me out of all the options out there, actually made a selection, and actually chose me to be fitting to their needs perfectly is something that is crucial for a child's self-esteem and actually likely to make them feel good about themselves. Secondly, we think that the grown kids that have the amount of nuance, especially when the parent tells them that, to understand that someone selling me doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't love me, but rather in the likely scenario, it means that they didn't have any other choice. They couldn't properly raise me and they wanted the best possible life for me. We think this is the likely way children are likely to perceive it, A, because optimism bias, B, because this is the best incentive that their parents have to represent it, and thirdly, because we think this is something that the society as a whole has incentive to actually encourage us to represent it, because even no parent that actually sells their child also wants to tell, I did it because I hated my kid, right? We think that generally this is going to be the predominant narrative in society. Before I go on, opening.
The narrative of being chosen is completely symmetrical with regular adoption, it's irrelevant to those who actually now do not get adopted at all because parents.
I get to the comparative of adoption now. Okay, so to the point of adoption, we do not agree that the people who choose to buy kids are, in the likely case, the same people who would adopt children in the status quo. We think that the very fact that people have the ability to adopt a child for free and choose to pay money for it means that they do have other incentives than just having a child, right? And we think that this means, like, few incentives are brought here that, by the way, are already considered by OO. Because what we know, many parents do not want to adopt today because a child is too old, or from a background that might have them scarred for life, or simply not fitting for their own choices. And we think this is great. You know what? We think that while this is a discriminatory mechanism, and maybe we don't like these parents generally, we think this means that generally we grow the general lot of how many kids are adopted rather than just make the transfer, right? Because it's the parents who don't care, the parents who are willing to take a child lovingly, regardless of their background, will go to adoption. It is cheaper. It is some. And by the way, just remember, I wanted to say this, okay? So, and please note also, like, Sela already consented himself that you also have a lot of price that you need to pay in order to adopt, and it's also very difficult in itself. So we don't see why the entire case about it being free and therefore like less meaningful actually stands with his own analysis. But what we do think stands is many people would want to adopt if they can simply ensure themselves of having a sick child, having a grown child, having a scarred child. We think that the parents who don't care will continue doing it through the mechanism of adoption, which is perceived as more moral, as obviously cheaper, etc. But we think that the parents who are on the status quo don't adopt. The families where we do actually have the problem that OG presents without the ability to solve them through the welfare system, these are the sort of parents who are likely to actually change their mind and actually choose to take a child into their home and into a better life once they know that they can actually avoid all these things that scare them in the idea of adopting a child. We think that, obviously, also, we do think that once you actually put in it the money, do the selection process, etc., you obviously also do have enough effort put in to actually care about the child, right? We do think that once you have enough time and money invested in it, it's not something that you do light-handedly. Beg you to propose.